Okay, Luke 23. Remember, they're changing my voice. Before I get into this, I want you to understand certain ideas. Okay? The theater art manifest destiny idea is a sort of European idea. Okay, and of course, there was a bunch of Jewish bankers in Europe and so on and so forth that other Jews and other people didn't like. And they kind of spread their influence around the world with the European governing class, and they insisted on manifest destiny. These people were key and instrumental with the Freemasons and the other groups and the military groups and the other groups that, including the churches that really slaughtered Native Americans and did this, that, and the other thing. They define themselves thoroughly as Satanists, and it's all over popular culture and to some degree over and even conspiracy theorists. And this is where they overlap with the popular culture explanation that there's a bunch of bankers and military industrial complex types and rich people, oligarchs, European governing class people who want to strip people of their rights and rule over them unfairly. And they, in recent years, in recent decades in history, okay, the Jewish internationalists really emerged to really take a huge slice of the pie. Okay, let's just, I'm not racist or anything. This is just mainstream history. You have to understand this to understand what's going on and why attractive women shun me. They shun me because they've accepted the mark of the beast, the world, the military industrial complex, the governing class, where they look at it in terms of white entitlement, white privilege, token minority entitlement, token minority privilege. Okay? For example, Martin Luther King wasn't, in popular culture, he wasn't a token minority, right? He was somebody who was a hero. He was token minority ish, okay, but he was somebody who crossed in over into the realm of die for what is right, right? To just want to do God's will and not the will of the state, and to come off as sincere about it. Okay, someone who's actually sincere is above, logically above the European governing class. That's key in American culture. They're above the rich. They're above the government. Okay, Martin Luther King at the time was above every politician in America in reality, and that's part of what defines Americanism to the point where we have a Martin Luther King Day. This is one of the issues Republicans really fail, but liberals, in terms of they both parties fail in their own way on this issue. Okay, and this is touched on in Luke 23. We'll get to that. That righteousness that comes from sincerity and having a valid path to continue. You can't look at the modern trajectory of society, what's going on, and say, hey, there's a possibility for a decent future. So the sincere mulatto person or black person who's like Martin Luther King, okay, and it's hard to imagine another race like him, right, because of, kind of racial differences, individual differences, the differences that exist culturally and racially and genetically between people. So when we look at it, it is most embodied by me. And for when people don't know who I am, perhaps the next best thing is Martin Luther King, but he doesn't quite cut it because he didn't have a pinpointed plan like I do. Okay, and he wasn't Christ come back like I am. He was just trying to fill huge shoes at the time. So key in Americanism is judging people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, especially when it comes to privilege, right? The European governing class got their position from ill-gotten gains, blood money, colonial rapes and murders, okay, and the entitlement that comes with the color of their skin and things of that nature. And I'm sure you all know what I mean, okay? So in my life, I've seen the failure of America to the extreme, where they refuse to rally to me and instead are following the military industrial complex, the governing class, the corporate state. Okay, and this is key in Luke 23 and in Luke and in the Bible in general, where it's God versus money and those types of ideas I referred to before, especially the Jews and the Romans, the specific ones, and the people who are like them, who crucified Jesus and mocked him and spit on him and tried to kill him and stone him and try to throw him off a cliff. So the Romans crucified Jesus, but the Jews were trying to find a way to kill him at every turn. They were trying to stone him to death. They were trying to push him off a cliff, what have you. Okay, and they were denying the truths that he was propounding. And the modern day version of that is me, the last valid leader ever possible. Okay, and there's Jews and there's whites and there's LGBT and there's token minorities and everyone else is taking their side. It's like the crowd that yells, "Give us Barabbas." Okay, we'll get to that. All right, so I needed to give you that kind of background into this for you to understand this chapter better, because I don't want you to listen to this and think that you should go to church or something. These people are against me with all their heart. Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah, a king." Okay, so they refer to the Messiah as a king, right? And kings wear swords for a reason, and the root and offspring of David, right? And they lead their people in military combat. 2 Samuel 5, when the Jews said to Jesus, excuse me, not Jesus, the Jews said to David, they said, "You are the one who led us in our military campaigns, not Saul. You're the true leader because of the martial and military force, right? The divine military, not worldly military, not American military, divine martial kind of angel army force that was in you that was leading the Jews at the time." Okay, so subversion, right? Subversion, right? What version? Is it a true version of events, or are you substituting something for it? Right? Subverting our nation. So he's not really subverting the nation. He wasn't really opposing paying taxes to Caesar, and he actually is the Messiah. On the other hand, okay, when you look at it from their satanic view, then he was subverting the nation. Okay, he was opposing payment of taxes to Caesar in that he was telling people to, you know, to not be rich. If you're rich, you're paying more taxes, right? So he's telling people to not be a worldly Roman type of person. So in the sense, he was opposing it. He was opposing the system in general and trying to get people to transcend it and overcome the world and not find their lives in it. Okay, and he was claiming to be a Messiah in a way that wasn't consistent with their satanic beliefs. So you see that clash that comes into play, just like the clash between God, Martin Luther King, and me on one side, okay, and Harry and William and governing class people and all kinds of corporate guys and unfair sheriff and Nottingham types in the government and all the politicians and everyone else on the other side. Okay, this is the truth of the matter. So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." Okay, so he said, "Your actions have said so." Pilate knew what he meant because he had people spying on him and trying to, reporting back to what these exchanges, what was going on. Had some Jews were there betraying the other Jews and reporting back to the Romans, just like Judas was betraying Jesus. Okay. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man," but they insisted. "He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here." On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he had hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him, dressing him in an elegant robe. They sent him back to Pilate. Okay, so you see how the Jews are accusing him. They're trying to get him to die. They're mocking him, okay, and they're trying to take away from what he's doing. Just like America, instead of standing with me, they've taken the kind of European governing class side. They're on King George's side of this thing. They're on the devil's side, etc. And they're persecuting me and trying to make it seem like I'm crazy. They're fuming me. They're poisoning me. Attractive females are shunning me. Okay, financially sabotaging me. What have you? Okay. And everything else that comes with psyops and organized corporate state sabotage and espionage and so on and so on. Okay. That day Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this they had been enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who is inciting the people to rebellion. I've examined him in your presence, and have found no basis for your charges against him." Now keep in mind, it's part of where you get the Masonic wordplay for getting along. Say we're all getting along, right? All getting alpha along. Okay, and talking about tall king, alpha bout. It's the reason why Jesus is depicted as tall. And it has to do with African genes. When you look at the similarities between me and the depiction of Jesus they use, you can tell that they turned down some Ethiopian women, brought them to the Greco-Roman cult system, and had some people who look more like Jews, more like Nebuchadnezzar, more like some Nero and stuff. They became the patriarchal line for these Satanists and these Venus and Aphrodite prostitutes, right? Ishtar and Aina and all these other prostitute cults in the Middle East and in Southern Europe. and they spread all throughout Europe, and they became the false image of the Virgin Mary, and so on and so forth. So they have this kind of whitewash, the satanic whitewash false image of Christ. They use females who are somewhat related to me, whether through Ethiopia or Igbo or both. Okay, it's basically both is where the genome overlaps and so on and so forth. Anyway, something to that effect. Similar gene expression for nothing else. Anyway, where are we here? Okay. Neither has Herod, for he has sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him. So the idea of the official stance of the state, right? The stated argument is that this guy has no criminal record. Okay, when it comes to me, right? It's the modern parallel. He has no criminal record. He's done nothing wrong. He has his right to his religious view. Okay, you people can't beat him in a debate, and you're acting like children. So I'm just gonna release him, right? So he says he hasn't committed any crime. So what does he say here? He said, okay. He said, therefore I will punish him and then release him. So he's trying to placate him. So even though he hasn't done anything, because you're all pissed off and he's trying to keep the Roman order, he's like, okay, I'll punish him anyway and release him. But you have no basis for a charge. Okay. Now the crowd, and this is just like with attractive women, right? They're so unreasonable. And they say, okay, you've shunned him all this time. You've punished him by shunning him all these years. Maybe it's time to stop shunning him. Okay, and they're throwing a bitch fit instead. So it's parallels to this. We see, but the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us." Release Bar Abbas, right? Bar as in bad, Abbas meaning father. Now Ra means God. It is referring Ra when the English, the Greeks, I believe, gave the name to Ra, just like they gave the name Horus to the idea of Horus. Okay, it means God in that context. In the Hebrew, Ra means evil. So the wordplay there is ban God, people trying to be like God, right? Ban God fathers. And it's also be evil fathers. So these people wanted people to be from the evil Roman bloodline. So they're kissing Rome's ass. They're saying we have no king, and the king comes with a phallic symbol, but Caesar. So they're saying they're accepting the patriarchal line of the Greeks and the Romans and the LGBT community. Right? That's why Isaiah refers to them as the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they're prostituting themselves all throughout the Old Testament. It's no different at this point in the Bible. And it ends that way as well. Okay, with all the people who don't obey God through me, okay, going down to the realm of the dead. The nations, including the nation of Jerusalem, right? The nations go down to the realm of the dead. The wicked go down to the realm of the dead. All the nations that forget God. All the nations surrounded me, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. Okay, and the whole world is going to be destroyed. Okay, so Jesus makes it clear in Revelations and other places, so is Isaiah and Jeremiah, that those who remain on earth after I'm gone are going to hell and living pitiful lives first. See Jeremiah 50. First one was mental weaklings, gone mad with idolatry, mad at terror, afraid to man up, and going crazy as a result, and their brain functions suffering severely as a result. Okay, not suffering because of being persecuted for righteousness' sake like me, but suffering because they refused to man up. All right. But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us." Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Okay, so they love violence and bloodshed and rape and murder and these kind of crimes. He wanted to throw an evil rebellion. Okay, just like you see with these controlled opposition movements in America. Not just the January, 6th rioters or whatever it was, the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, but it's every political party. What they're doing is wrong, whether it's deception or physical force or both. All right. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time, he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and release him." It's just like now. It's like, on this verge, you guys keep pushing to be gay. One way or another, your poisons, your fumes are going to kill him one way or another. Okay? And he's done nothing wrong. And he's not even a threat to power. You say, why? This guy's not going to overthrow Caesar. What's the big deal? Okay? I'm not going to overthrow the American government. I'm not going to overthrow the state government, or even the fucking city government. Okay? Or even your pitiful church councils. But you're still like, crucify him, like a bunch of sissies. You say, why? Why? He appeals to him 3 times. 3 strikes, you're out. I have found no basis. I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. He says, give me, what reason do we have? Therefore, I will punish him and release him. But with loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. And we'll get into the next video, some more about this. Stay tuned.